Hey everyone, it's Andy Kushner, host of the Wedding Biz, and today is a special release. And before I talk about it, I want to mention last week's episode, which was part 2 with the iconic planner and designer David Stark. David has a clientele that includes Brad Pitt, Louis Vuitton, Saturday Night Live's 40th anniversary, and high visibility events and fundraising galas. He's got 5 books and product collaborations with well-known luxury brands and is an Industry Hall of Fame member. There was so much wonderful inspiration and education to get from David's interview, so be sure to check that out. So here's the deal with today's release. Now, I've been running so hard for so many months straight between my 2 businesses, Kushner Entertainment and the Wedding Biz, that it is easy to forget that I am a human being, at least I think I am, on a planet that is hurtling through the sky. I'm sure that many of you can relate to this when we just get on this like bullet train. And it's just so easy to lose a real sense of self-groundedness. And so I was vacationing in Sedona a few years ago, and I spontaneously walked into this photographer's gallery. And the artist happened to be there, which is really unusual because he's usually traveling all over the world. And we really connected. And so I returned and I interviewed him for actually another show of mine called Extraordinary Ordinary People. And listening back to it just recently helped me to reconnect myself with myself, to the planet. I just felt so much inspiration. And I'm preparing to speak at a podcast conference called Podfest 19 in Orlando, where I'm going to be for several days. Very excited to speak there. They want me to talk about how it is that I started this show, The Wedding Biz, and how it grew so quickly and to such a level and all of that. So I'm really excited to share my story. And rather than have no show to release this morning, because there's just way too much these past few days, that instead I felt you would enjoy something really different, which, as you know, I put on the show every once in a while. I did that with my release of Kimmy Werner a couple months ago. But something that would hopefully, like my guest did for me, would help ground you and inspire you from deep within, which is something that we can apply to everything that we do. So his name is Greg Lawson, a brilliant and passionate photographer. I don't want to say too much more about my conversation with Greg. I want to let you discover it for yourself because it's very moving. It's a beautiful story. And if you have even just only a half hour, at least listen to the first half of this interview. In the second half, Greg talks about a movement he started called the Principle Movement, which is to teach, honor, and promote positive life principles and their values, something this planet can use right now. So again, enjoy my conversation with Greg Lawson. So Greg, it is good to be back. I remember meeting you walking into the gallery and about a year and a half ago. And what happened was I was driving by with this nice young woman I was dating at the time. We're in Sedona. It was toward the end of the week. And I saw, I believe you still had the elephant picture, right? Was it out there a year and a half ago?
Yes, it was the same elephant.
But that drew my eye because, first of all, I love elephants, but I saw that. I thought, oh, let's go in here. It's interesting, right? What grabs someone's attention. Yeah. And I walked in, and your studio, your gallery is really stunning. It's beautiful. And as you know, I started to walk around and we started to talk and really connect. And I didn't have the podcast show at the time, but as soon as I did, you were one of the first persons. I was thinking, I got to come back because your story I thought was just so interesting. And, we talked some, not a lot but some about your process. And I'm looking around just in this conference room, this room that we're in right now, and I'm seeing, landscapes and animals. And, of course, it's far more than those 2 words, but, it immediately evokes an emotion in me. And that's what really grabs me about you as an artist, is it immediately evokes an emotion. So I would love to know, how this started for you. When did you first get that spark about photography? How old were you? What happened? How did it go?
Well, let me say, first of all, that my spark isn't necessarily photography. My spark is the planet Earth. And it's the planet Earth that I am simply in love with. And so photography is a means of expressing that love to other people and to share that. So I'm not a photographer's photographer. I'm a naturalist, and my intense interest is the planet. But photography is what I do because I capture the planet that I love, and I share it with people through that medium.
Well, then when did you get the idea to do it through photography? Were you already, I don't know, traveling and?
No, I grew up in an artistic home. And so everyone in my family had an artistic pursuit and they were good at it. And I was the only one that was, well, a little bit deviant. I just didn't.
Deviant?
Deviant. I was not pursuing anything like the rest of them. And so
what were they doing when you say the rest of them? What kind of artist?
Well, my mother was a dress designer and a fabulous cook, a chef cook. My father was a landscape architect. My sister was an oil painter, and she did beautiful work. We lived in a home where my parents bought furniture. They would restore it and turn it into an artistic beauty. So I grew up. All around me were artistic elements, and I just wasn't pursuing any one of them. So we were in New York City on a family trip, and my mother decided, let's get this young fellow a camera. So she bought me a camera when I was 14.
14? Okay.
Yeah, and so I fell in love with the idea of freezing all these wonderful Manhattan elements in this little box.
Manhattan? You're saying you grew up in New York City?
No, we were visiting there.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay.
And so I loved the idea of taking these elements and putting them in that little box and heading down the road, taking them with me. And so that's how I fell into photography. I really like photography. Yeah. But I don't like it because of equipment and everything, like that heavy duty photographer. When I travel, I don't take tons of equipment and lots of assistants. I don't need that kind of thing because I'm really about bonding with the earth, bonding with the creatures on it, bonding with the societal elements that I love very much and on our planet. So the camera is a handy tool for me, like this microphone is a handy tool for you.
I get it. Yeah. I can understand. I mean, from playing trumpet, it was a means for expression, basically. I love music. I mean, I love trumpet, but I also love piano and I love songwriting. I love singing and right. But the trumpet was my way of, okay, I get it. So in terms of just loving the planet, connecting with the planet, what do you remember about that?
Well, from the time I was a little boy, I loved the idea of places. I would sit down at night in my little bedroom and fine tune the radio to pull in the most distant radio stations I could listen to. Yeah. This was exciting to me. And then I would go to the library on a regular basis and I would read books about places and I would look up about places. So the lure of the planet was always right there at my doorstep. Yeah. And that's what I've lived, I've loved, and I love currently is the planet I live on, all of the different societies, rather than looking at them like the divisions that they've turned out to be. I look at them as one whole and one whole planet of just wonderful opportunities to meet people, meet animals, meet societies, pass through wonderful places that are, exciting to me, even at this stage in my life. I'm still that little boy.
And you've been doing this for how long?
Well, I got my first camera when I was 14. How old am I now?
Did I ask that?
No, you didn't. So we'll just have to leave that up to the discerning mind to say, well, now those vocal cords, they sound like they've been around.
Well, you've done it more than 15 years.
More than 50 years.
Okay.
Yes. I've done it more than 50 years. But as I worked with photography, I moved into greater and greater appreciation for the methodology of capturing places and creatures on film. So I moved into large format and I crawled under the black cloth and learned how to articulate every particular move with a camera. And it was a wonderful experience because to this day, I'm still that slow, stodgy, articulated person.
I don't know if I know exactly what you mean, though, by that articulate with photography and what you're referring to exactly.
What I mean is that if you pick up a camera today, a digital camera in today's modern world, it is so full of automatic elements or potential for just pushing a button and the camera makes all the decisions.
Well, snap and shoot.
Snap and shoot. Snapshots are the order of the day.
Yeah.
However, with large format photography, every move, every decision has to be made and articulated individually.
Yeah.
So it doesn't do anything automatic. Every single step has to be thought out and meticulously ordained. So.
And asking you as a layman, okay, so I'm going to immediately give myself that label so I don't appear as stupid as I am about this. So in terms of if you're, let's say, some mountain and there's a certain amount of cloud cover, I mean, it's a combination of to get the lighting the way you want to grab it, given what's going on. And if it's a moving, something that's moving, an animal or not, I mean, you're making all these decisions with every shot or every location.
Well, with every shot, you have to do it because with a large format camera, at least with the old school large format camera where you had to load every sheet of film individually into a holder, and then you would arrange for that shot. You'd take the shot, you'd take the holder out. You'd have to get another
just
holder.
Like in the movies.
Yeah. So you didn't have the option of bursts like you do with a digital camera.
I don't even like bursts, but anyway.
Yeah. But and I don't need them either because I like to look at the animal. The only time I would need a burst is with an animal. But I like to look at them. I like to establish contact with them. And I like to know that I'm doing it. I'm making the decision on when to select the right instant of time to record that event. I love doing that. And so I'm not interested in the automatics of the camera.
Yeah. We're going to skip around, which is fine. I do want to go back to earlier in your life, but as far as capturing the moment, let's talk about animals. Because even while I was getting here, setting up, you started to say something about animals. I mean, the pictures I've seen, I mean, I'm looking at one right now. I don't, a cougar, up on a tree branch, a bird, how are you capturing this? Are you staying in one single spot for even days at a time, waiting for the right moment?
If that's required, that's what I'm willing to do, but it's not always required. What is required for me personally and for my style is I want to bond with the creature to whatever degree I can. So whenever you first encounter any creature, and you notice this particularly with birds, because they're very skittish, they will get out of your way. And so most animals will do the same thing. Many of them will. If by lingering with them, I get over that bump that is an immediate rejection of my presence, and then I move them into a position of saying to me, either leave me alone or come on in, buddy, and let's spend a little time together. It's one of those two is going to happen. If they say, leave me alone, I leave them alone. I'm not pushing them. I'm not interested in hiding behind blinds to capture them because I'm not a scientist. I'm an earthling. And as an earthling, I want to bump into my fellow earthlings and enjoy them and have them enjoy me.
So you're not doing like again, I don't know the terms, forgive me, but like a telescopic kind of a lens. You're not shooting.
Much.
I mean, of course, with some lines, you're not going to be too close, but you're not doing that kind of shooting at all. So
I'm more intimate.
Can you give me some examples, some stories about that you've had, I mean, I know, I remember from a year and a half ago, background to the right, some stuff with some lions. Like how do you do that?
Well, I talk to them and I look for little signs
in English
and movement in English. Yes. And they don't respond in English, but they do respond with.
Well, it depends what country they're in, I guess.
Yeah, well, it sure does. Yeah, but they have communication skills that are far better than mine.
How so? What do you mean?
Well, they will have body language, little movements, little sounds that they'll make. how they turn their head, how they move their ears, how they choose to use their eyes, tells me something about them.
But let me ask you, with all these different kinds of animals, it's not like you're studying. Like I'll see documentaries about, whatever, the horse whisperer or someone who's great with tigers. And they study, they're interacting, they're experimenting, they get to understand, communicating with them.
Yeah.
All these different animals, and you're not doing that.
No, I'm
not. So how are you recognizing with the movements and everything, or is it an innate ability that you have, do you think?
Well, I don't know whether it's innate, but it is something that I've honed over the years, because when I spend time with animals, I listen to them. And if they have something to communicate, they do. They always have something to communicate. But if they choose to communicate a positive vibe, then I'm all over it. If they choose to communicate something that says, leave me alone, then I want to leave them alone. I don't want to impose myself on them. I don't use a flash. I don't do anything to intimidate them. I don't yell at them or to try to motivate them to do something. I speak to them quietly. And I speak to them softly. Most animals respond one way or another. Sometimes it takes time. Back in the back room, there's a golden eagle sitting on a tree.
Okay.
That I enjoy very much, because when I came across this eagle, it was, put up a little defense. It didn't want me around initially. And so I
How did you know
stayed
that?
with it.
Can you describe that?
Well, you know it with a bird, because a bird will depart. Okay. So this bird departed to another tree. But rather than letting that deter me, I chose to walk over to that tree slowly and to talk to the bird and to get closer to it. And when I did that, it slowly let me get a little bit closer and a little bit closer. And over 3 hours, I was able to create just a simple communication with the bird where it wasn't so afraid of me.
Yeah.
And it knew I wasn't a threat to it. So animals have a sense that they can understand things better than we can. I'm not afraid of the animals, and they sense that. Even
a lion, for example, a tiger?
I have a healthy fear of the potential.
Yeah.
But I'm not struck with fear.
Yeah, you're not like trembling a little bit.
I'm not doing that. And they know if you are. Another thing about working with animals that I've kind of noticed over time is that they're just like we are. I mean, if I catch you when you're hungry, you might be a little irritable. Yeah. Right? Or if I catch you when you're sleepy or when you're not feeling good. But if I catch you after you've had dinner, then you might be a little bit more amicable.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So animals are the same way. When we see documentaries, it's a very interesting thing to me that many documentarians, they love the chase, they love the kill, they love this kind of stuff. So they're always dealing with the animals in that particular mindset.
Yeah.
So my thing is totally different than that. I don't follow them, and I don't chase them, watching them kill other animals. This is just not what I want to do. It's not what I want to record.
Yeah.
And it's not what I want to share. I want to share the more positive sides of life. So the positive side of every life is living life with enjoyment, living life with what you've been given to live it with. Every animal has been given its own set of capacities, and it uses them the same as we do. And so the same as we want to be feeling content, so do they. Now, different animals are different. I'm not claiming to be psychologically connected to them to know what they're thinking.
Sure.
And I don't get into that. I don't play that game that they're thinking this or they're thinking that. I only know how they react. And I've seen consistencies in the way they will react. Sometimes I've read in books about what to expect from animals. And I found that my personal experience with them is different than that. So I believe that maybe the person who wrote the book is writing it from the scientist's perspective, rather than the perspective that I would have, which is just a fellow earthling.
Yeah, I was going to say, there was some kind of documentary. I wish I could remember the name of it, I've seen plenty of them, but one in particular somehow really pulled me into realizing what you're talking about, your perspective that, you know what, these animals, they're just sharing this planet like us. I mean, and by the end of the documentary, I was feeling like, I already feel like this anyway, but it really amplified, who the hell are we to think we can control them and, take the land, put them in zoos, all this stuff, or like you say, to chase them. And, they're just sharing the planet like us. They're born at a certain time, like we're born at a certain time, right? They're here for a period of time like we are. What a wonderful way to look at it.
It is. It's the right way to look at it to me. In fact, you might like this story. I was with a guide. When I travel to a place like Africa or India or some isolated place, I like to hire a guide, a personal, private guide, not with a group.
Yeah.
Because the guide will know things that I don't know. Generally speaking, I'm a discoverer, and I like to rent a car when I go places and discover things, not necessarily go to all the must-see places, but to find things on my own that I find are wonderful. And so sometimes I think that the things I discover are more important than the things I might have chosen to go see if I had a checklist.
Can you give me one story that you really particularly remember and was moved, where you were in a situation where you discovered something you didn't expect? Just, I know that's all you do, but
right over there, right over there. Do you see that giant mass of fur hanging on the tree?
Oh, yeah.
It looks like fur.
Yeah.
It's a giant apartment complex created by birds in southern Africa. And it's a beautiful, beautiful complex. I was driving down a road in the Namibian desert, way off to the side. I saw this, and you see these nests on different places. I've seen them even on telephone poles, but this particular one was particularly fascinating because it's like 8 feet long, and it has all of these little compartments where they have built their nests and they come back to. Being able to be out and just looking for things on the horizon.
Yeah.
Driving slow enough to do that.
Yes.
Or getting out and walking and looking. These are the opportunities for discovery. You see little animals, you see little creatures, you see little flowers in the field that you won't get if you're just driving.
How do you decide where to go to have an opportunity to be discovered?
Well, that's, I would say, either serendipity or it's just a lure that comes upon me. I want to go to Argentina, and I want to go to Argentina. I just have this desire to go to Argentina. Yeah. So I go and I rent a car and I drive. That just comes upon me. I don't have any, I'm not ordained to do it by an editor or someone in a magazine, someone who wants to put together something with my work. I just do it because it's my own passion. And the same as we all are drawn to those things that impassion us. This is what works for me.
Yeah.
So the whole world is my,
well, the possibilities are endless. It's completely endless.
And the more information that we get, like living in the age that we do today, with everything available, all kinds of knowledge available on the internet, it just seems like we could never accomplish it all. Not even a little bit. I could never. I've done this all these years, and I feel like I've done nothing.
Wow.
Yeah, I've done nothing.
Interesting. So you'll just get, so in other words, you'll just get an idea, like you said, like, I'll go to Buenos Aires and I'll drive around the countryside, and you bring some cameras and you just go, you tell your wife, I'm going to take, how long do you usually go when you go? Is it vary or? It
varies. I don't have any set schedule.
Yeah.
When I'm out and about, I will sometimes schedule a return trip. On the airplane, and then I have to force everything into it, and I might have not taken enough time, but I'm willing to invest whatever I can.
So you'll get a one-way ticket at first and just go and see what happens.
I don't typically do that. I typically get a round trip ticket just for the economy of it. But I could do that.
How long is there any range of time? Or maybe that's changed over the years.
1 to 4 weeks.
Oh, that's typical for you, 1 to 4 weeks?
1 to 4 weeks. Uh-huh.
And what kind of places do you stay in? I mean, do you ever literally camp out? I mean, like when I see some of, I guess, would we call it landscape pictures, where it's not animals. It's like I'm looking around in this one room alone out of the hundreds and hundreds of pictures that you have, photographs, and it looks like some real remote areas. Do you camp out and stay?
Well, here in the United States, we kind of have an ideal of what a hotel or a motel is like, and now with people opening up their homes, it's Airbnb's a little different.
Oops, I should get a sponsorship for saying that.
You should say that, but in other parts of the world, little hotels and little places to stay are all over the place.
Huh? Really?
Yeah, and so you can. Yeah, I mean, I remember being way up in the Andean mountains of Peru with a friend of mine. We drove up out of Lima and took a 6-day trip across the back of the mountains, came into these little villages, and there was always a place that we could stay because people would like it. They are hospitable.
That's more common outside of the United States, isn't it?
So I've never found it to be difficult. The other thing I found is that when you talk to people and you meet them, people are warm, they're hospitable, they will invite you to come over.
Yeah.
I found this all over the world. Not too much driving around Washington or Pennsylvania or New York.
Right.
But, generally speaking, in Europe and almost everywhere, I've made good friends, good contacts, and we support each other.
It's interesting. You're just making me think back. My first trip by myself, as a real adventure, I think I was 22 or 3. And a former roommate in college said he had a friend in Paris, this woman in Paris, Isabel. And she, I think, was living with a boyfriend named Dino, an Italian. And I said, I'd love to go to Europe. And he said, well, call Isabel. And I remember saying, what do you mean, just to get advice? He said, no, you could stay with her. I'll arrange it. And I said to him, what? She doesn't know me at all. He said, no, in Europe, no big deal. And I was like, okay. Sure enough, we did not know each other. We met. She picked me up at the airport, very kind. Introduced me to Dino, the boyfriend, handed me a key of my own. They were in like the 12th arrondissement. I don't remember how to say it. And I had this key to this apartment. And then occasionally I would see them and we'd have dinner. And that was it. I mean, I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, that's right.
Not very common here. Well, maybe in some ways there's something now called couch surfing, but even, yeah.
Well, even when I was a young man in the 60s, we had that going on. There was a subculture that had that going on, and we called them crash pads, and we would all look out after each other and help each other out that way. So people do it here, but it's just not so common. It's not so easy to come about as it is in other parts of the world.
So will you even meet people as you're traveling who say, come stay at my home?
Absolutely.
They find out what you're doing. And so you're having experiences upon experiences upon experiences. Yeah. It's not just to go take a picture. You're wow.
Oh, they're wonderful experiences. I remember the first time when I was first married, my wife and I moved to, we wanted to live in England.
Uh-huh.
So we went to England and we're on the train. We flew into, where was it? Luxembourg, I think it was.
Uh-huh.
And we took a train from Luxembourg to Ostend, which is a little town on the Belgian coast. And then from there, you would take a boat across to England.
Yeah.
So we did that. We're sitting on the train, and there's just a man in the compartment we're sitting with, and he invites us to come and stay with him and his wife in their outside of London.
Yeah.
And so we went and stayed for a few days.
Uh-huh.
I mean, this is like not unusual.
Yeah.
In many cultures of the world.
Yeah.
People are warm and hospitable.
If you approach them warmly and hospitably.
They're wonderful.
Yeah.
I was in a train one time in Japan. I arrived at the airport in Tokyo, and I had a long train ride to get to my hotel, which I had already arranged for. And I'm sitting there in the train as we're moving, and I'm looking at my map, and I'm just deciding where I need to get off.
Yeah.
And this woman came up and she sat down next to me, and she said, "Where are you going?"
Now, is this
in
was she
English.
Japanese? Okay.
Yeah, a Japanese lady. And she said, "Where are you going? Where do you need to go?" I showed her, "Well, I'm going here." She said, "I'll go with you." She took me to my hotel. She got off, interrupted her schedule, got off of the train, made sure I was taken to my destination.
Oh my God.
Before she departed.
This is without any conversation.
Without any meeting at all. I never knew her. And then she was warm and hospitable. She became a friend. And this has happened to me many times.
Yeah.
Many, many times. When I say a friend, I mean, you have acquaintances that you have all over the world when you're a traveler.
Yeah.
And so this is a very nice thing. People are wonderful if they're given the opportunity to be.
I was, people must be getting sick and tired of me talking about Maui, but it happened recently, so I was there for 5 weeks. I was telling you a little bit about it. And I went to Hana, which is, well, you probably know where that is.
The road to Hana. You survived the road to Hana.
Yeah, but there's also the road back, which is not on the road to Hana. I went a back way coming back, which was even more spectacular.
The west side.
Yes. And, you're not supposed to take a rental car, and I did. But anyway, I was on, I don't remember the name of it. So I'm sure there's a 400-foot waterfall, and you hike through this bamboo forest. Does this ring a bell? And it's like a 45-minute hike to get to this beautiful, spectacular waterfall. And when you're going around the middle of it, there's these massive bamboo forests. When the wind was going, you would hear this clanking at the top. I've never heard anything like it. And I was so in the zone, like what you're talking about from travel. I was so in the zone. I stopped and I would just listen to the clanking of the branch. And then I would go on. Anyway, I'm coming back from the waterfall, back through the bamboo forest. And there's this woman walking toward me. And we start to talk. Within 3 minutes. We basically had decided that she's going to end up in Maui. She's traveling for a year and a half from Dresden, Germany. And we ended up hanging out for like 3 straight days, doing all these incredible experiences. And we became, it wasn't even a romantic thing. It was just such a deep, I don't know how to say, what I'm talking about, open, vulnerable friendship that came up. And now we're probably going to go bike Oregon in a few months. But I experienced that, and she told me about her stories because she barely had any money. I mean, very smart and all that, but didn't need much money because she was having this constantly everywhere that she traveled, just meeting people and connecting with people. And I even asked her, have you had any problems, especially with men? She said, no. And I realized later, after getting to know her, it's this overall vibe. Like, obviously this Japanese woman had a feeling about you that you're not going to be something threatening. You're this lone guy sitting on a train, and she did that.
I believe this, that we always hear about, women are trained to think they're going to have all kinds of trouble with men. We hear all kinds of trouble coming from animals. Don't be around the wild animals. They'll get you. We're trained culturally to almost expect these things. And so they're not, I don't believe, as common as we are led to believe. I think that most relationships between people are sensible relationships. They are not abusive. Most relationships are not that way. And they're not that way with animals either. Let me tell you, I was doing some research for a lecture I was giving about animals. And I asked this question online. How many people were killed by animals in the United States in 1 year?
Okay.
So I came up with a resource to provide an answer to that question. And this resource claimed that there were 124 documented deaths that were because of a conflict with an animal.
Right. In a country of 320 million people.
Yes. Like in this large, vast land with all of those folks that you just mentioned. And far, far, far more than 300 million animals. So the ratio isn't too high, but 124 deaths, and this included bees, snakes, and wasps, they said. By the same token, 132 people had been killed by having a car wreck with a deer. It wasn't the deer's fault.
Yeah.
It was the car's fault.
Well, maybe the deer was drunk and stepped out on the road.
Maybe. But, my point is, we're always led down the pathway of fear, being afraid of everyone and everything.
Yeah.
And this brings me, of course, naturally to where my heart lies. Principles are the key to life. Principles are the things that we have inherited. Listen to this. Would you agree with this? I'm interviewing you now. Law serves as a guiding light only until we come to realize that principle is the guiding light.
Say it one more time.
Law serves as a guiding light until we come to realize that principle is the guiding light.
And how do you define principle?
Well, principle can be defined in a variety of different ways. Some people, in fact, will call it law. But principle, the principles that I'm talking about, I believe are law, but they are a natural law.
Yeah.
They are inherently part of who we are. They're part of our humanity.
Mm-hmm.
And we have received them from, as part of the gift, as part of the package of our humanity.
Mm-hmm.
So principles could be stated to be a natural law. How could that be expressed? Well, what about integrity? When you meet someone who shows integrity, they're showing it because A, they have the capacity to do so.
Okay.
And B, because they probably made the election to do so. But the reason they can do so is because they've inherited this principle as part of their makeup. And every person is going to be manifesting principle either positively or negatively.
Yeah, or negatively.
Every person will. Take, for example, this. You're walking down the street in Washington,
Mm-hmm.
D.C. You see a homeless person
Mm-hmm.
sitting in the street, sitting in a little cubicle along the road. Every person that passes by that person is going to have a reaction.
Yep.
Every single person. One person's reaction will be, why do you get a job, you bum?
Right.
Another person's reaction will be to close their eyes and ignore it, or seemingly ignore it.
Yep.
Another person will say, here, have $1. Go get yourself a cup of coffee.
Mm-hmm.
Another person will come by and say, there's a shelter just around the corner. Can I help you to get there?
Right.
This is where you need to be.
Mm-hmm.
Every person that is aware of that needy person sitting on the street is going to have a reaction, whether they pretend that they have it or whether they don't.
Mm-hmm.
They're going to have it within them. This means that the principle that they inherited and received as a human being,
Mm-hmm.
the principle that might be called empathy, is going to be triggered. And it's going to be triggered to the point that they are going to have a reaction within. No one is going to avoid that trigger.
Yeah. There's something.
There's something.
Yeah.
You're either going to react negatively or you're going to react positively.
Mm-hmm.
And so there's a whole series of principles that we can say have come our way as part of humanity. Things like empathy, understanding, loyalty, honesty,
Mm-hmm.
integrity. These kind of things are the capacity of every human to perform. Not because they've been mandated by law, but because they've been received inherently as part of our as part of the spiritual person that we are. This is true. We can't deny it. Every person has it. And I noticed this by traveling around the world, how true this is. Every person is essentially the same. How we choose to respond to different circumstances has a lot to do with culture.
I was going to say, it's very much shaped. My father was an anthropologist, so yeah, a lot of it's shaped by culture.
It is.
And also an upbringing. I mean, there's so many different, but that's a huge
culture.
one too.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
Upbringing is a culture. So you're raised by a family that takes you to church. You're raised by a family that takes you to the school of evolutionary thought. You're a human being that is being influenced by someone else. And this is going to become possibly part and parcel of who you are.
Mm-hmm.
But I like to remind people that whether you say that God made us or whether you say that we came from a pool of slime, it doesn't matter. I don't want to go back that far. What I teach people is this. Let's just go back to that no one will deny, that place that no one will deny, and that is that we all came from the same ancestral pool.
Yeah, okay.
No one will deny this.
Right.
And so every human that you meet, Every human being on the planet Earth has received the same capacities for principle.
I'm getting now. Okay.
For demonstrating principles. The difference between principle and law is very simple to me.
Mm-hmm.
Law, as I'm describing it, law is something that is mandated by humanity.
Mm-hmm.
Principles are mandated, so they are a law, but they are a natural law.
Yeah.
Imposed or institutional law is yet something different.
Mm-hmm.
So if we live our lives by law, institutional law, then that's one thing. We will grow up obeying or disobeying a law, and we will suffer the consequences that man deems necessary to get us to obey their laws.
Uh-huh.
If, however, we grow up with an appreciation for principle, we have a law built within us. And when we act according to that law in a positive way,
Mm-hmm.
we are benefiting ourselves, and we're benefiting every person we come across, and we're benefiting every creature. We will act with thoughtfulness and consideration towards the planet we live on. We're more apt to do that when we're principle oriented than we are when we are law oriented. This book I wrote on this subject,
One for All, an introduction. Yeah, I know you've created something called the Principle Movement.
Yes.
So what is the mission of it?
The mission of it is to encourage people to recognize that there's a value in creating a principles-based society. A principles-based society is a good idea.
But isn't this something that either already exists or doesn't?
It doesn't. We live in a law-based society. When our forefathers in the United States, for example, came to this country, they were running away from other countries where they felt they were being oppressed. And so they arrived at the shores of the United States, and they decided our forefathers, some of our forefathers,
Mm-hmm.
and foremothers, I'm sure they were involved too, but they decided that we needed to have a different kind of a society. They came from a place they felt oppressed,
Right.
and they decided that we were going to create a society where everyone would seemingly have equality. And the way we will do this, they said, is that we will create law, and all people are equal under the law. That's what they said they would do.
But wait a minute, just for a moment, isn't that also something necessary in the sense of creating a structure for people to be able to not kill each other and not steal and all of that? I mean, isn't it necessary to set up any kind of new world, in a sense, new culture? I mean, what else would they do?
What else would they do? What else could they do? They could establish a culturally
I see. I think I know where you're getting at. Where they're
society.
Driven by that as opposed to driven by I have to follow these laws.
Yes, exactly. Now, I'm not saying that law doesn't have its valid place. Absolutely it does. When you live in a society, then you need laws in that society to govern such things as human health, to govern such things as transportation. I mean, you wouldn't want to be out on the road driving your car and with no law,
Mm-hmm.
with no laws that everyone would have to obey.
Sure.
This wouldn't work. We have laws that are essential to our well-being.
Mm-hmm.
These are laws that govern government,
Mm-hmm.
that govern business, that govern transportation and safety, health, these kind of things. We need laws for
Sure.
that. But what I'm saying is we don't need laws to regulate you unless you demonstrate that you can't be principled.
Yeah, got it.
So when you cross a certain line, then what you're saying to society is, now I'm ready to be dealt with by law. But until you cross that line, you don't have to be living under the burden of law. And law is a burden.
Yeah. So what are you doing with this movement?
Talking about it, welcoming people to join in, to be part of the principled society that I would like to see become the foundation of a better society.
Do you know what's so interesting? Obviously, is the timing. I mean, here we are in 2017. We know what's going on with our government, our president, and his administration. Wow. It seems like because I know you started this. We talked about this a year and a half ago when I first met you.
Yes, I've been talking about this for years.
Oh, for years.
And teaching it.
And look now what's going on. We need this more than ever now.
We need it more than ever. And so does the whole world. You know, I would think it would be a wonderful thing if some little country somewhere would say, let's give this a try. Because what it would do, it would make them a model for other countries. Our country's not going to do it. Because it's a hard sell. And the reason it's a hard sell is not because it's not sound. It's very sound. But it's a hard sell because I have two things that constantly get in the way of people's being able to embrace it. The first is that the unfortunate reality that we all know is what the sociologists call the 80-20 rule or the 90-10 rule, that the vast majority of us are we're followers. And so we're going to follow quite readily where we're led. And then you move over into the other group who are the leaders. And this is the problem we have. The kind of leadership that we have over us leads us into places that we shouldn't be going.
And this is happening globally. This is a very scary time.
It is. So we need to find leaders. Since we know we're going to be followers, we need to support the kind of people that can lead us where we want to go. Not where they want to go.
And so where would that be? Like, what would this look like?
Well, there's nothing wrong with democracy, is there? This is an ideal. It's a nice ideal. But the point I'm wanting to make is that in a democratic place, the people, the grassroots movements of the people should determine where the leadership is coming from, not the power elite who determine who they will allow to lead you. So we need to be decisive. We need to say, wait a minute, we don't want this. We want this. And we need to do something about it. Is it likely that we're going to? Not too likely, because history proves that we have a tendency just to follow. And when they blow their whistles and they say, come, follow me into war, we'll go straight into war, straight into suicide. We're like the lemmings that we've read about. It's not likely going to happen, but there is every reason to strive for it.
Well, and
that's what I'm doing.
And I would say right now, you know, again, with what we're talking about, what's going on politically all over the world, it's actually ripe for it. If there's an opportunity for it, for people to grab hold of this, and now is, you know, I mean, people are getting galvanized. This reminds me somewhat of the late 60s, early 70s, you know, where wouldn't you say in a sense that the protest that was driven by a certain sense of principle? You know, maybe it wasn't called that.
Yeah.
So I wonder if now there's this a new, you know, again, it's happened before, but this new ripe opportunity for what you're talking about.
Well, I hear a lot of wonderful voices out there that are encouraging us to be better and to move in this direction. They may use different language and they may have different ideals, and it doesn't matter to me. I mean, like, I feel that a principled overlay could be applied to any existing culture. You don't need to tear anything down. You only need to build up. And you can build up by starting with a principled base. You don't need to destroy someone else's ideal, someone else's society. You only need to help them to appreciate that they can have a better society with the application of this principled overlay.
So what are you doing specifically to spread the word?
Well, I talk to people privately. I talk to people. I have a radio show in Phoenix, Arizona, and in Seattle, Washington. That's weekly.
Can people access this show through the internet?
Yes, they can. They can access it on kphx.com in Phoenix.
Okay, we'll put a link in the show notes to this.
KKNW in Seattle.
Okay.
And they can listen to it online when it's live. And I think that those two radio stations also make the historic shows available.
Yeah.
So what I do on the show is I interview people that are setting a good example. In different good examples in principled living and in in employing principles. There's many good examples. We are surrounded in the world we live in with negative examples, but the negative examples really aren't the ones that are in the dominance.
Yeah. Can you give just one story, one person, an example of how they're doing this, maybe who you've interviewed?
Well, I talked to a lady not too long ago in Arizona who works for a group that has come together simply to be mentors for other people and for young people in particular, young people that are having difficulty adapting to society. And so these adult mentors are essentially adopting someone and helping them to get through life and to learn how they can live life in a more practical way.
You know what? I would say that story you just gave, that to me is the most powerful, most impactful way. Matter of fact, you're the one who introduced me to John. Is it Soderbergh? Soderbergh, who I sat with this morning, and that he was talking about that too, mentoring and just helping people, and especially children. Like he has a thing, especially, and I can relate to this for orphaned kids, but the impact that you could have on a younger person, where they may not be in a situation for whatever reason where they don't have the nurturing, they don't have the support, they don't have the guidance, or maybe they do and it's negative. It's a negative influence.
Sure.
But I think that is where the biggest opportunity is right there.
Well, it's a wonderful opportunity.
Yeah.
Indeed.
I mean, you affect one life, and that one life is going to affect tons and tons.
I think that the basis, of course, for all education lies with the young mind. When you get to the young mind and you teach it, for example, I'm talking about principles. When you can teach a child by the time they're 3 that there are certain principles in life, then you will give them something that will guide them through life forever. If you just wait for the state to get a hold of them and put them in school and then have the state teach them whatever they want to teach them, then you're going to end up with juvenile delinquents and so forth, like we've already seen.
So I'm curious, let's just say that you have an opportunity with a 3-year-old. What are some of the things you would say to this 3-year-old or 5, whatever?
Well, I'm not the ideal person for that, but someone who has a mother or a father with a kid, or a person with the capacities to act like a mentoring mother or father.
Well, and it's going to be their behavior. School teacher. A 3-year-old's it's going to be the behavior that's going to move them at that age.
It is. But the first thing that every person needs is to have love and to have, to know that they are appreciated, wanted, and needed. When they have this will help them to have a nurturing environment.
It's a foundation.
Yeah, it's a wonderful foundation.
Yeah.
But, by teaching them, for example, a little child might be tempted to swat a bug that they see it. To teach that child that this is a life and that we need to preserve life and protect it and not just treat it like a toy. Is a very simple foundation that can get into that little child's mind and heart. Yes, some minds and hearts are going to naturally gravitate farther and farther away from the ideal. But by having a principle-based society, we can encourage people through reward systems to come back to the principle base and not to allow themselves to divert too far from it. We're all going to divert. There's not a person who won't, but we don't want to live in a society with just diversions.
Yeah.
We want to have a society that has a core. And if principles are the core, this is far better than law being the core. And I'm saying that because I'm opposed to law. I'm not. You've already heard me state that. But I am pro people and pro principle. If you had principles at work, you wouldn't have animal cruelty. They've done studies to show that many of the people who end up to be the worst nightmares in the adult world,
it starts with
animal cruelty.
Sure, serial killers especially were known for that. So I'm curious. Are you now spending more of your time, focus, energy on the principle movement, as you've named it, or are you still traveling, doing your photography, doing both?
Well, the ideal of the principle movement came out of my travels. It came out of my privilege of meeting people in many societies, in many cultures, and determining that we're all just the same. We have the same wants, needs, desires. we're not really any different. We're only different because societies or cultures have divided us away from each other.
Mm-hmm.
And so I know that people are the same. We have the same inherent gifts. The people living in North Korea may be living under burdens that we can't understand, but we are living under burdens that they can't understand.
Right. Yeah.
It's culturally different.
Mm-hmm.
And so when we can approach each other as fellow earthlings first and worry about the color of our flags later, then we're a lot better off. This is why my experience with animals has taught me that all of the animals in the field are just fellow earthlings.
Yeah.
And when I treat them that way, it gives them the chance to treat me that way. I have found the same is true with people. When I treat people equally, I find that people treat me the same way I treat them. Almost universally, that's true.
Yeah.
Let me share two brief experiences that I had.
Sure.
That I related in this book.
Okay.
That were really telling to me. They were really powerful examples of reality. I was in Italy and I was setting up a tripod on the steps of Trevi in Rome.
Okay.
And I was getting ready to photograph. A woman tapped me on the shoulder. She said, "Signor, is that your camera bag over there?" I said, "Yes." She said, "You need to keep it close to you or someone will take it."
Yeah.
So I went and got it and I kept it close to me.
Right.
She was wise. She knew her own culture. She knew the potential of her culture.
Yeah.
And she was helping me to realize that I was at risk. Several years later, I was in a train, again in Japan. And I was coming into a station called Shinjuku, which is the most used station in metropolitan Tokyo, I believe. They say more than 1 million passengers a day pass through this. A day.
Oh my God.
Pass through this station.
Okay.
Well, I was eager to change trains, because they're very fast. They stop, you get off, you got to get on.
Yeah.
I was eager to change. I picked up my luggage. I headed out the door. I'm looking up at my at the monitors telling me where I should go. And all of a sudden, I realized I left some valuable camera equipment on that train.
Oh, no.
The train had already taken off.
Oh, come on. Yeah.
And I was flooded with that sinking feeling.
Oh, yeah, sure.
So I spent a little while looking for someone that could speak to me. I found a person who worked for the trains, who was a station master of some kind. He could speak a little bit of English. He took me back into a quiet room, sat me down, and said to me this very telling statement.
Okay.
"Don't worry. No one will take your equipment."
What?
That's what he said.
Because of the culture?
Because of the culture. So he pulled out a piece of paper. He called and made a few phone calls. He wrote down on a piece of paper the station I was to go to, pushed it across to me, wrote it in Japanese, wrote it in English, and said, "Go there. You'll find your camera equipment there." And so I did, and I did.
Wow.
And so what was the difference between the two?
Wow.
They were both wonderful people. They were both helping me as a stranger, as a traveler.
Yeah.
And they were both telling me that they knew the culture they came from.
Yeah. Got it.
So one put me at greater risk than the other one did. So they were both wonderful people. If the Italian lady had been raised in Japan, then she would have had the Japanese culture.
Right.
If the Japanese person had been raised in Italy, and then he would have had the Italian culture. So it isn't the person, it's the cultural influence.
I see.
That affects the person and dominates us throughout all of our life. So sometimes we make a decision to change our culture. People from Europe decided they're going to go to this wonderful new country called the United States of America, and they're going to start anew. People from all over the world have done this. Americans have made the same decision. I interviewed a lady 2 months ago who had made that decision that she wanted to move to a South American country because she wanted a change in the cultural influence. And so she did. And she was happy she did it. People have the capacity to make great lives for themselves by making changes. But when those changes are made, they want them to be positive almost all the time.
Yeah. Right.
So principles are the basis for our positivity.
I see.
We inherit them.
Mm-hmm.
We have switches within us
Right.
that
You could
we
shape
can
them.
turn it off, turn them on, turn them off. And when we are principled people, look at the way you, Andy, or I, or anyone else, look at the way we respond when we do something positive for someone else. Let's say that homeless person. If we said, "Come on, I'll take you out to lunch." When we were done with that, we would have a euphoric feeling.
Sure, feel wonderful.
We feel good because we release endorphins in our system by performing something positive. So this is inherently human.
Yeah.
It's why it's the good thing to do, the right thing to do, the right thing to teach other people. And so when we start with our children, I would love to have educational systems adopt the principle standards and teach them, but they don't do that.
That's interesting. Or maybe they do it in Japan, right? I mean,
maybe they do.
You know? So if people want to find out more information about the principle movement, get the book, One for All, where do they go? You have a separate website for that?
Well, we do. We have a website. You can go to tpm.today, and this is a website, or you could go to tpm.org.
Okay.
Or I think it's that. We have several websites, but they all converge.
All right.
And so if you go to tpm.today, so today takes the place of .org or .com.
Sure.
tpm.today, then you can learn a little bit about who we are. You can get in touch with us. You can order the book if you would like and be at it.
All right. And you have, wonderful books of your photography. Obviously, a gallery here in Sedona. If people want to purchase some of your work or the books or just learn more about you, where can they go for that?
Well, our photography website is simply greglawson.com.
Great. LAWSON, greglawson.com. We'll put all of this in the show notes, make it easy for people. Well, Greg, I hate to stop this because I feel like we can go on and on and on.
Well, you see that I can.
Well, no, believe me, I can too, for sure. But this is really just fascinating. And I want to say again, I was drawn in from meeting you a year and a half ago and how easy it was to connect with you and your work. I mean, this gallery, it's like a museum. So if only people could time just, like Star Trek, just beam themselves over here.
I wish they could. But what you brought up is very interesting because
which part was that?
About it being like a museum.
Yeah.
Because it is. And we are converting it, in fact, into a museum.
Oh, yeah.
And we're in the process of doing that now. We've opened up a new gallery in the uptown area of Sedona where we're going to sell our smaller prints. But we're turning this into a gallery and a museum of my history because it's long and varied and it will be an interesting thing for many people who we hear the term, it's like a museum here all the time.
Oh, you do?
And we appreciate that.
You're kidding. You're saying that I wasn't making a particularly brilliant statement?
You were making a brilliant statement, but there are many brilliant stars in the universe.
That's true. Thank you for listening to my conversation with Greg Lawson. Check out his website where you can see just stunning photographs of what he does and products. And that is greglawsongalleries.com. Greg Lawson, LAWSON. So greglawsongalleries.com. And you'll find these, again, just stunningly beautiful books of art. And also in terms of the principle movement that he started, you can go to TPM for the principle movement.today. So tpm.today to learn about his principles movement. You can also go to the show notes at theweddingbiz.com to learn more about Greg and to see some examples of his photos. I want to mention next week's guest. This is another real exciting interview for the weddings and events industry. It is part 2 with the iconic, the legendary Colin Cowie. You can catch part 1, which we released on February 18th, just last month. Again, part 1 was February 18th. And on February 20th, we released the Next Level episode, which, as you know, is when I have a guest co-host and we talk about the highlights of the interview so that it helps you to apply to your own business to raise it to another level. And my special guest star co-host was Abby Larson, founder of Style Me Pretty. So go back to part 1 to get caught up with Colin Cowie. And please be sure to subscribe to the show so you get notifications and follow us on Instagram, Facebook at Wedding Biz Show. Again, Wedding Biz Show. I want to thank our sponsors, Kushner Entertainment and OFD Consulting. So we will catch you next week.